'Tis I, your old pal, King Chuck. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Oh my God. 72 degrees today. I'll take it. We've had too many cold days, too many days where I am just, I don't know what to say, folks. But, you know, as we all know, as some of you may know, this website, chuck69.com, it started as a Howard Stern fan site because I love Howard Stern. I grew up listening to Stern and wanting his show to be aired right here, you know, up in northern Michigan. And what happened was the media up north didn't like him. They thought that his show was too obscene and they would rather hear Bob and Tom instead. And, you know, Bob and Tom. Basically, it's like Bob and Tom basically is to cracked magazine like Howard Stern is to Mad, if you know what I mean. And, you know, Bob and Tom have their funny moments, but the reality is, you know, they're not really good. So, but anyway, thankfully Howard is on Sirius XM now, and he's kicking ass and taking names over there. He's only down to 2 days a week now. You know, and, you know, he gives out the excuses. You know, not really excuses, but there's the reasons. He's 72 years old now. Robin's actually older. She's 74. And Robin, of course, is battling cancer. And, you know, I mean, and not only that, I do have to agree that there are some aspects of the Stern show that we miss. I miss, and a lot of you out there miss, like the strippers and the porn stars. Although he did recently have on the phone Yucko the Clown. Yucko was a frequent guest on the Stern show years ago, and he was actually begging Howard for money, and Howard was like, fuck you. Yeah. Anyway, so Howard did make the headlines recently. He did make the headlines a few days ago, actually. So, a former employee of his, not in the radio division, but rather in his home, somebody who actually worked in the Stern residence, she's suing Howard, claiming that Howard made her work in a hostile work environment. And the word is, it was not related to Howard, really. It was more related to Beth and her 90 cats. Now, of course, if you're a hardcore Stern fan, you know Beth runs an animal sanctuary in the Stern home. And so this woman apparently was actually an employee of Beth's cat rescue. And apparently, she claimed that there was a hostile work environment over there. And Howard did talk about it on Tuesday. He very briefly. But he did say that the lawsuit has no merit. And that's all he was going to say about that. And I'll bet you that the lawyers are ironclad telling him, yeah, don't talk about it right now. This is, I mean, anything that will come out of your mouth might damage you. And I don't blame them. You know, that's what lawyers are for. So the story goes like this. So I've had an experience before with an animal sanctuary. And so let me tell you the story. So my mom and stepdad, once upon a time, had a parrot. An umbrella cockatoo parrot named Kirby. And Kirby Now, for those who don't know parrots very well, an umbrella cockatoo is a parrot. It's a type of parrot that has a crest on top of their head that opens up, especially if they get very excited. There are several types of cockatoos out there. There are many breeds of cockatoos. And Kirby was an umbrella. So, anyway, it was a wedding gift for the both of them, by them. They basically wanted to raise Kirby as their little bird child. And Kirby was they learned the hard way. My mom and stepdad learned the hard way that owning a bird is damn near a full-time job. And Kirby was a very he was a pain in the ass. Sometimes he can be friendly and wants to cuddle and maybe even give you a little kiss or two, but sometimes he'll bite you to shreds. One time, he actually bit my mother's finger to the bone. And my mom was in agony because of that. So, long story short, they moved to Arizona, they had a business failed, then they got divorced. So my mom and stepdad came to the agreement that they would have to give up Kirby because, number one, neither of them wanted him anymore, and number two, they were going to be living in a situation where they were going to be in a multi-family unit. So what happened was my mom heard about this organization called Broken Wing. Broken Wing was run by a man named Greg Kervakian. And Kervakian was a born-again Christian. He was a really nice guy, and he basically his intent and purpose in life was to take parrots that he understood that there was a problem in this country, and the problem especially around Phoenix, and the problem was too many people just simply didn't know how to take care of a parrot. So what he did was he formed Broken Wing to take in parrots that their parents, pet parents don't want anymore. Because he knew that too many of them were going to be abandoned and alone. And, not everybody wants a parrot because they're loud. They screech. They cry. Yeah, all that good stuff. So Mom put Kirby into this new home, Broken Wing. And, Greg's in the house that Greg lived in was nice. It was a beautiful home. He was a former airline pilot, by the way. So, anyway, the long story short was that Craig, I keep calling him Craig, it's Greg. So Greg ended up taking care of Kirby. And when Mom and I would go to Arizona, when I went to Arizona to see my mom, we would go up and see Kirby. And he was having the time of his life. He made new friends. Broken Wing was a nice facility. There were a lot of birds there that looked very sick. And Greg pointed out that a lot of the birds look sick, are sick, not because of him, but because too many people don't do their research on owning a parrot. And they think that parrots can eat everything. They can't. They got to eat a lot of grains and fruits and vegetables. Too many parrots are given candy, and he actually had a few parrots that had organ failure because of that. And some parrots were had virtually no feathers. They were very sickly looking. I mean, really hard to look at times. But Greg did a good job giving these parrots one-on-one care. And he had some employees with him. But yes, there was a problem. And that problem was that there was a group of trolls on the internet who decided to attack him and the organization. And they all were saying crap about him, saying that he was abusive. He hurts these birds. And they tried to compare him to other organizations that were abusive to these animals. And that was anything but him. And there were reports of noise coming, and it's like they lived in a neighborhood that had to be very quiet. And Greg actually gave his guest house to these parrots. So he had like 40 parrots living in this guest house. And he took awesome care of them. Don't get me wrong, but yes, the noise level was a little high. One time, he was kicked out of his house, and the parrots were put onto the street. And I think it was because of these fucking trolls that wanted him to go down in flames. They have nothing to do but sit on their ass and attack people because they actually love doing what they do. It's kind of like what I went through with these trolls from the Buzzboard many years ago, who all pressured me to leave, get off the Buzzboard in tears, which I kind of did, unfortunately. But I just realized I had to move on. But the reality is, folks, is that Greg went through hell. I mean, he did find other places for the parrots, and, I guess he found some people who were looking at adopting parrots and, seeing if they liked it or not. And he was considering getting a ranch over in California that was in the middle of nowhere. And he would call it the Broken Wing Ranch. But, he had legal troubles. He was in a lot of pain. And, of course, he got cancer. He ended up with cancer. And eventually he died from it. And what happened was one day my mother got a phone call. And it was from an animal control group. And they asked my mom, because I think Kirby was chipped, Are you the owner of a bird named Kirby? And my mom said, yes. Well, we found your bird in this garage loaded with abandoned parrots. And the cages were stacked up, on top of each other. The place was filthy. There were some parrots that were, I think, dead. But what happened was, allegedly, Greg had nobody to take care of the parrots. I mean, everything's a little sketchy. But Kirby survived, and he was adopted by a woman from Las Vegas, So Kirby now lives in Las Vegas. He's 29 years old, and the woman who now owns him, I've seen pictures of Kirby with his new mom, and she does a good job with him. And of course, my mom is in no position to take care of Kirby anymore, sadly, because she lives in an apartment now. But I mean, that's the reason why people want to start animal sanctuaries. They want to take care of, they understand that sometimes, not just dogs or cats, but birds need love and care. I mean, they are vulnerable creatures. And unfortunately, it's sickening how some people who think that they can own an animal end up abusing them or feeding them the wrong food. It's, folks, some people should never own an animal. But I look at Beth, and Beth talk, Howard and Beth talk all the time about all the cats they take care of, and they took in this one cat who lived in a junkyard, and kids beat it up all the time, and the cat was like 19 years old and it died, but at least it died in good hands, and anyway, I just look at Howard and Beth, and there's probably a lot more to the story than I know personally, but all I can say is I hope, that we'll learn more from this case as we go on. Anyway, so let's get back to, I want to talk about, I'm going to tell you that, remember Ed Schultz? Ed Schultz was the man who had a radio show many years ago, number one progressive talk radio host in America. His story was, long time ago, he had a talk radio show. He was based out of Fargo, North Dakota. He started his career at a radio station in Fargo, KDAY. He started at a TV station, KDAY TV, and then KDAY Radio. And the story was, he started his career as a football player for the Canadian Football League, and then he got injured, so he went into broadcasting. And in the beginning, his radio show was very conservative. I mean, he was a lover of Rush Limbaugh. He talked about how much he loved Reagan and hated the Clintons. And then what happened was, a woman called him one day and said, please go to the Salvation Army. You're going to see there's a lot of people desperate. And that's what he did. He drove to the Salvation Army soup kitchen in Fargo, and there was a long line of people just waiting for food. And it was because unfortunately, there were no jobs. All the unions were busted, all the jobs disappeared, and and Ed grew a brain that day. So eventually, he realized he can still hate the Clintons and be a leftist and be a pro-democracy person. He wanted to restore democracy to America because he knew it wasn't working for everybody, especially the middle class, or what was left of it. And then what happened was the show got syndicated. He had a show on MSNBC, and then he got fired. And he later revealed why he got fired. It was because Phil Griffin, the boss at MSNBC, told him, he was a big Bernie supporter, Ed Schultz. Ed Schultz supported Bernie Sanders. He talked about Bernie all the time on the show. He talked about how he should fix America. He was the best hope for America. And Griffin was like, nope, you're done. And if you watch Fahrenheit 11/9 from Michael Moore many years ago, he talked about it. The networks would have Bernie Sanders on for 10 seconds and then flip to a picture of an empty podium. And they were like, we're cutting off Bernie so we can go, because we think Trump is going to be here in a few minutes. Yeah, they did it because they didn't want, they knew that if Bernie Sanders was elected president, MSNBC's stock would go down. Oh, it's going to be bad for everybody. Oh, we can't have that. And that's the problem. They were afraid of Bernie because he spoke the truth. And then what happened was, he ended, that was the reason why he lost his job at MSNBC, and then he went to RT America, which was actually owned by the Russians. And unfortunately, after that, he died. He died at 64 years old, and I think it was 2018 when he passed away. He had heart troubles. I mean, he was a bigger guy. I mean, that says a lot right there. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is because, I look at Ed Schultz, and there was a guy up in northern Michigan who was just like Ed in a way, named Vic McCarty. And Vic McCarty was just like Ed. He started out as a sports anchor at a TV station, 7 and 4 in northern Michigan. And then he worked at pretty much all the TV stations in town except for 29 and 8. And he moved over to radio and became a right-wing talk show host. He worked at WTCM, AM 580. And, I look at it this way. I know a lot of people in northern Michigan are sad that he's gone. And he died. By the way, he died on Monday at the age of 65. He died from pancreatic cancer. And the story was that he died on Monday. So for the time being, Jack O'Malley is doing his show. And then Ron Jolly, he's going to be retiring. And Jack O'Malley is moving to his slot. And what's going on... So anyway, what I should have said, too, is that for his obituary picture, the family decided to choose a picture of him wearing a Trump-Pence press credential. And I'm like, oh my God. Did the guy support that asshole? Seriously? And I know that on his Facebook page, he even had a picture of the Israeli flag. And I'm like, it's like the episode of Family Guy where the gang, Peter and the gang kill a guy who turns out to be a Nazi. That's how I look at it. But anyway, WTCM has announced, first of all, my personal thoughts are, I kind of feel sorry the guy died, but I cringe knowing that he was a Trump supporter, allegedly. But anyway, so what's happening now is that Dave Ramsey, I don't know if he's still going to be on at night too, but they're going to air 2 hours of Dave Ramsey now on WTCM from 10 a.m. till noon. And then what's going to happen, so I don't know if the night slot's still going to happen because, they're TCM, W580 is now carrying Tiger Baseball at night. So what's happening now is that so it kind of reminds me of a story. When I was much younger, in my 20s, I didn't get many raises. I hardly got a raise at all. I only had one raise in 10 years from my ex-boss. Instead of giving us a raise, he showed us a Dave Ramsey video. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ on a Harley. This is how you put $1,000 in your savings account and then you find out how much you owe on your largest credit card. You pay that first and then... Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the baby steps to wealth. And guess what? I wasn't... folks, let me tell you what happened. The reason why I'm telling you this story is that over in Ontario, California, did you hear about this? An employee of Kimberly-Clark, the company that makes Kleenex and Continental toilet paper, They, get this, they had this 1 million square foot facility, warehouse in Ontario, California, and it was destroyed by a fire. And it was arson. It was caused by an employee who actually taped the whole thing and posted it on TikTok. And while he was setting up, he was putting pallets of Scott paper towels and Kleenex all ablaze. And while doing so, he was uttering, "That's what you get for not paying your employees a livable wage." He said that many times. And then the whole thing just burnt to the ground. So anyway, there were 20 people in the building at the time. They all escaped. The guy is now being held. He was captured. And, but now there's, there are some, but anyway, they have said that burning the place down wasn't going to help matters. I mean, it's kind of like, how in, Office Space, that one guy, Milton, kept getting moved around all the time, and he ended up burning the place down. But the other guys, they found work, in construction, and they were like, "Hey, this pays pretty good." Yeah, that's how I kind of think about it. And you see, folks, this is what's wrong with America. There's a big gap between the worker getting paid and the boss getting paid. And it's widening because of Trump. I just passed a few gas stations, folks. They're $4.19 a gallon. Price of food keeps going up. And personally, the good news is my ex-boss got, I told you the story. My ex-boss got fired. He actually got bought out. And he ended up, the new boss started giving me raise after raise after raise. And now I don't live in a crappy apartment anymore. And I got my own house, although I share it with my father. And, folks, the reality is that this is why I vote Democrat. I vote Democrat because that's all Republicans want to do. They don't want to tell companies to give their workers wage increases. I mean, let's remember, folks, the last time minimum wage went up, Obama was president. That was back in 2009. And part of the reason why it didn't go up under Biden was because of the fact that while they were doing the Build Back Better plan, the company that owns Arby's and Hardee's and Subway and Jimmy John's, Cheesecake Factory, Sonic, Moe's, Southwest Grill, they actually stood in front of Congress and said that if you raise the minimum wage, it's going to hurt our business. And the company is worth billions of dollars. They're an evil company, folks. Hell, they're even named after the main character in the Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. Work. R-O-A-R-K. You see, folks, this is exactly why I get angry at the Republicans. They, in Trump, in MAGA. And, Trump goes around the country and tells everyone that the biggest problem we have is transgender. No, it's income inequality. It's the fact that millions of Americans don't have good health care. That's why. That is the fucking reason why. Trump lied to us, folks. He lied to us that gas prices would be cheaper. No, they're not. that there wouldn't be any wars. Pfft. Yeah, really. And he'd make this country a better place. What the fuck happened? Oh, he also promised freedom of speech. Look at what the Trump regime did to... look at what happened to Stephen Colbert. He's getting fired from CBS. And this week it's been announced that that late show with Stephen Colbert is being replaced with a show called Funny You Should Ask, which is a show that's produced by a guy named Byron Allen. Byron Allen, who, by the way, is a piece of shit. He is a guy who's going around Hollywood telling everyone he's a billionaire. He bought up a bunch of TV stations. And he even bought Channel 12 in Flint, WJRT. And one of the very first things that he did when he bought Channel 12 was he fired a lot of the staff, laid them all off. And at the same time, he bought a $32 million house in Los Angeles. And yet this asshole calls himself a Democrat. I mean, if he was a true Democrat, he'd have progressive values. He'd give away a lot of his wealth. And now he's having a hard time paying the networks. He's actually had to sell some of his stations. And another thing that happened was he announced that he was going to fire all the meteorologists on his stations and replace them with taped forecasts from the Weather Channel, because he owns that. Folks, I have family that live in towns where Byron Allen owns a TV station. And one of those towns is Huntsville, Alabama. That town is just chock-loaded with tornado warnings. There's a tornado that hits the town a lot. If I lived in a town that was prone to tornadoes, I would rather watch a live meteorologist on TV in my hometown than to watch some crap out of Atlanta. Some guy who probably has never been to my town before, period. But you see, that's who Byron Allen is. He's a corporate Democrat. Limousine liberal, as my good friend Darren Gibson calls him. But that's what it is, folks. I mean, I just think, by the way, Byron Allen is actually buying time on CBS. And to have his shows on. And one of the lessons I've learned is that if you actually have to pay a network to put your show on the air, then it's really bad. And that's what it is, folks. I mean, hell, Byron even tried to sue McDonald's many years ago because he claimed that they don't care about black people, which I cry bullshit on, because there's some McDonald's even here in Grand Rapids that are owned by black folks and hire black people. He's just being frivolous. Now, the only good news is he's actually had to sell some of his stations. And, unfortunately, he still owns Channel 12 for the time being in Flint. But who knows? I just think I hear the two Jimmys laughing. Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel, especially Kimmel. He's going to get a lot of Colbert's audience. Mark my words. But the point is, folks, people need to do their research when they vote. They need to vote for the most progressive candidates because they care about you. They care about how much money you make. They know you need money to pay your bills. That guy in Ontario, California, who burnt down the Kimberly-Clark building, was only getting paid like $18 an hour. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment there is $2,000 a month. So if you spend $2,000 a month on a one-bedroom apartment on $18 an hour, you're only got $800 left over. But that's the way it is, folks. That's what happens when you vote. Vote not just for Republicans, but for vote blue no matter who, people. And all I have to say about that is we need progressives. Not just in Congress, not just in the Senate, but in the White House. And I hope that our next president will be a true red-blooded progressive. And I know it's probably not going to be if, we invoke the 25th Amendment, which needs to happen. I doubt if it's going to happen, but anything can happen, folks. I mean, J.D. Vance has proved that he's not an effective leader. So, that's all I have to say for now, folks. Donald Trump, you're getting what you get with Donald Trump. And, if you want more money in your pocket, all you have to do is not vote for anybody with an R after their name. Period. Full stop. Alrighty, folks. I gotta go home. Good day and good luck. Talk to you later.